Jinu made his way to the Hunter's Market, a bustling place filled with traders and buyers looking for valuable artifacts. He approached a shopkeeper and presented a red crystal ball, the Orb of Avarice. The shopkeeper, a seasoned veteran in the trade, was astonished by the artifact. In his long career, he had never encountered anything like it. The crystal ball had an amplification rate of 100%, a remarkable feature considering that even the best craftsmen could only achieve a 50% rate. The shopkeeper thought that someone like Mr. Choi Jong-in would likely pay a substantial amount for such an item. When asked where he had obtained the crystal ball, Jinu simply replied that he had found it in a dungeon. The shopkeeper was amazed that such powerful artifacts could be discovered lying around and offered to auction the item for Jinu at a premium price. Jinu, however, needed time to think about it. His thoughts were already occupied with his immediate goal of clearing the demon's castle and to craft the holy water of life. To accomplish this, he needed protection against the intense flames within the castle. Turning his attention back to the shopkeeper, Jinu inquired about purchasing an artifact that could protect him from fire. The shopkeeper was surprised by the request, but assured him that fire-resistant artifacts were quite common. Jinu was puzzled, mentioning that he couldn't find any such items online. The shopkeeper explained that these artifacts were expensive and not typically sold over the internet. Despite their rarity online, they were readily available in the market because fire was the most commonly used type of magic in attacks. This explanation made sense to Jinu. He recalled that both Mr. Song Chi-yul and Choi Jong-in use fire magic, as did Tusk and his shadow mages. Realizing the prevalence of fire magic in combat, Jinu understood why fire-resistant artifacts were in high demand and readily available in specialized markets like the one he was in. The shopkeeper invited Jinu to follow him into a special area where high-level gear, artifacts, and armor were displayed. The space resembled a high-end showroom, with each piece of equipment meticulously placed inside glass cases. Jinu surveyed the items, but something caught his attention. Curious about the security measures, Jinu asked if the thin glass was strong enough to protect the valuable artifacts inside. There didn't seem to be any additional security in place. The shopkeeper explained that the glass was imbued with mana, making it strong enough to withstand a full-on attack from an A-rank hunter. Jinu was skeptical and voiced his doubts. To prove his point, the shopkeeper offered Jinu a challenge. If Jinu could break the glass, he could take any of the artifacts inside. Jinu, sensing the mana in the glass but still doubtful of its strength, prepared himself. His eyes glowed with power, and an aura surrounded him as he clenched his fist, ready to shatter the glass. As Jinu was about to strike, the shopkeeper, realizing just how powerful Jinu was, quickly intervened. He nervously admitted he wasn't serious about the challenge. If Jinu actually broke the glass, the elite members of the Hunters Guild would come running, as the auction committee had a security agreement with them. Internally, the shopkeeper marveled at Jinu's confidence. Despite claiming to be a mage-type hunter, Jinu seemed certain he could break the mana-infused glass. The shopkeeper couldn't help but wonder where Jinu's assurance came from. Jinu asked him if there were any weapons he could try out, specifically a dagger. The shopkeeper, pleased to assist, introduced his coworker as the weapon specialist and invited Jinu to follow him. As they moved, the shopkeeper noticed a crack in the glass case protecting the artifacts. He was bewildered, wondering when it had happened since Jinu hadn't even touched the glass. Sweat dripped from his face as he tried to comprehend the situation. In the weapons section, Jinu pointed to a particular dagger and asked about its price. The weapons specialist informed him that it cost 30 million won. Jinu thought about the dagger, noting that it was a B-rank weapon and weaker than his Night Killer, yet still quite expensive. At best, he estimated it was comparable to Kasaka's Venom Fang. Curious, Jinu showed the specialist his own dagger and inquired about its value. The specialist, visibly impressed, declared that the dagger was crafted by a master and valued it at over 100 million won. Jinu was taken aback by this revelation. He remembered buying the dagger from the system's shop for just 2.8 million gold. This new information made him reconsider the worth of items he had acquired. He thought about how Kim Sang-shik's steel sword, with a mere attack damage of 10, was worth 3 million, and how Jinho's armor and equipment had cost millions despite their limited use. Reflecting on this, Jinu realized that if an item from the shop could fetch such a high price, there was no logical reason for him to sell the Orb of Avarice, a rare and valuable item he possessed. This newfound understanding of the market value of his equipment made him appreciate the potential worth of his collection even more. The scene shifted to the White Tiger Guild, where Bacon Ho was still shaken by witnessing Jinu's immense strength. He pondered the possibility of a hunter being able to continuously level up, something that seemed unbelievable. In his enlightened state, Beck could accurately gauge an opponent's skill level. He was certain that when he first met Sung Jinwoo at the Red Gate, Jinwoo had been weaker than him, but now it was clear that Jinwoo had surpassed him by a significant margin. Beck realized how foolish it was to think that someone as powerful as Jinwoo would join another guild when he had the capability to start his own. The strength and potential Jinwoo possessed meant that he would always rise to the top, regardless of whether a guild was considered the best or second best in the country. Both Baek and Choi Jung-in had been wasting their time trying to recruit Jinwoo. The realization of Jinwoo's potential left Baek in awe and a bit regretful of their previous attempts to bring him into their ranks. Outside Jinwoo's apartment, a media frenzy was in full swing. The news of Sung Jinwoo's unprecedented rise from E rank to S rank had ignited a firestorm of public interest. Among the throng of reporters was Chief An, a high-ranking member of the White Tiger Guild, determined to recruit Jinwoo at any cost. Despite the overwhelming media presence, Chief An remained steadfast in his pursuit. Inside the apartment, Jinwoo's younger sister Gina was growing increasingly anxious about the constant media attention. The relentless clicking of cameras and the shouts of reporters had become a daily ordeal. As she peered out the window, her gaze met that of Chief An and his team. They shout, drawing the attention of the reporters who start taking pictures. Gina quickly ducks back inside, uncomfortable with the unwanted attention. Jinwoo, sensing his sister's distress, offered to confront the reporters, but Gina stops him, mentioning the hate comments he's already receiving online for snubbing reporters. She advises him not to care about the people outside. Just as the situation seemed to be escalating, an insistent knocking at the door jolted Jinwoo and Gina from their uneasy peace. Anger surged through Jinwoo as he prepared to confront the intruders, only to be met with an unexpected sight. It was Jinho, his face etched with despair and desperation. Expelled from his home by his father, Jinho had nowhere else to turn but to Jinwoo, seeking refuge and support. Jinwoo, confused, points out that Jinho had his own place, but Jinho explains that the apartment was under his father's name. He asks if he can stay with Jinwoo for a while. Jinwoo initially shuts the door, telling Gina that it was no one he knew. As the door finally closed, Jinwoo and Gina exchanged worried glances. The relentless pursuit by the media and the unexpected arrival of Jinho had turned their once peaceful home into a battleground. Jinho keeps banging on the door, pleading. Eventually, Jinwoo opens the door again and later arranges for Jinho to stay at a hotel. The scene shifts to Yujin Guild, where Myung-han and his wife are having a conversation about their son Jinho. Myung-han's wife expresses concern, suggesting that he might have been too harsh on Jinho. Myung-han, however, believes he wasn't harsh enough, feeling that Jinho should have paved his own path instead of working for someone else. Suddenly, Myung-han winces and starts feeling unwell. His vision blurs and he collapses. His wife screams in agony, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. Back at home, Jinwoo returned to his modest apartment, his heart heavy with concern for his sister. The recent surge in his notoriety had transformed his quiet life into a media circus, and he worried about the potential dangers that could befall on Gina in his absence. His gaze fell upon his sleeping sister, a pang of guilt shooting through him. He knew he had to take drastic measures to ensure her safety. With a focused mind, he summoned 3 of his most formidable shadow soldiers, the Orc Generals. One of you should be sufficient to deter even an A-rank hunter, Jinwoo mused, his voice carrying a hint of concern. A flicker of doubt crossed his mind as he realized one of his Orc Generals was missing. Didn't Tusk have 4 guards? Why are there only 3 of you here? I guess I wasn't able to make him into a shadow because I rammed him into the ceiling. He questioned himself, a trace of amusement coloring his tone. Deciding on a course of action, he dismissed 2 of the Orc Generals back into the shadows. Guard my sister, he commanded the remaining shadow soldier, his voice firm. I'll keep the other 2 as a backup, just in case. A sense of responsibility washed over him as he contemplated the escalating situation. Perhaps it's time to enhance the security of the entire neighborhood, he muttered, his mind already formulating a plan. Jinwoo, with a flick of his wrist, summoned additional shadow soldiers, their forms solidifying from wisps of darkness. This expanded contingent bolstered his defensive perimeter, creating a protective web around his home and the surrounding neighborhood. He ascended to the rooftop, the city sprawling beneath him like a concrete jungle. From this vantage point, he could survey the landscape, his senses extended through his shadow soldiers. Henceforth, he announced to his silent legion, his voice imbued with quiet authority, "You shall serve as the guardians of this neighborhood. Let your patrols patrols be swift and silent, unseen by the eyes of ordinary citizens. Remember the strength you possess. Even the most hardened criminals are but fleeting shadows before your might. Your presence here serves as a bulwark, a shield against the darkness that threatens to encroach upon this place. Consider this my gift to the community, a silent vow to ensure their safety. The next day, Jinho drove with Jinwoo sitting in the back seat, both of them heading towards Daesung Tower. Jinwoo, leaning back, pondered over the events of the previous day and the current state of affairs. Despite being expelled from his home, Jinho maintained a cheerful demeanor. Jinwoo, noticing this, asked, "Did you sleep okay last night?" Jinho responded affirmatively, mentioning the surprisingly good facilities at the motel where he had stayed. Jinwoo gave a nod of approval. "Good. Stay there until I find an office space for our guild," he said. He was determined to secure a suitable place for their operations, ensuring that Jinho wouldn't have to continue living out of a motel for long. As the car continued its journey, Jinwoo reflected silently on Jinho's decision to turn down the position of guild master. He hadn't expected Jinho to make such a sacrifice, but Jinho had done it for him. This act of loyalty left Jinwoo unable to say anything negative about the decision. Breaking the silence, Jinho inquired about their destination. "By the way, what business do you have at Daesung Tower so early in the morning?" Jinwoo, lost in his thoughts, didn't respond immediately. Instead, he simply slid the car door open as they arrived at the tower. "I'll be back," he said, stepping out and leaving Jinho in the car. Jinwoo had tasks to handle and goals to achieve, and Daesung Tower was the next step in his plan. A notification popped up as Jinwoo entered the Demon's Castle dungeon. He braced himself, knowing the difficulty level would increase exponentially from this point on. He had come prepared, having equipped new items to protect him from the intense flames inside the dungeon. His gear included a wind robe and a nameless ring imbued with water magic attributes. Jinwoo felt ready for the challenge ahead. Another notification appeared, indicating he had received a new quest. Jinwoo sighed. Again. The quest was straightforward. Collect the demon souls and defeat the Demon King, Barin, who resided on the top floor of the Demon's Castle. The requirements were clear. Defeat the Demon King. The rewards were enticing, with a top-tier runestone, Shadow Exchange, promising to grant a new job-specific skill. Jinwoo thought about his current job-specific skills, Shadow Extraction, Shadow Preservation, and Monarch's Domain, all of which had proven to be remarkable. He looked forward to acquiring this new skill. A booming voice echoed through the air, offering Jinwoo the choice of which floor to access. Without hesitation, with a wicked smile on his face, Jinwoo confidently responded 76. In an instant, a red glowing energy engulfed Jinwoo, transporting him to the 76th floor with a whoosh. He stood ready, bracing himself for the formidable challenges that awaited him. Jinwoo finds himself amidst a scene of utter devastation. Broken buildings litter the ground, and flames lick at the sky, painting the ash-filled air with an ominous glow. Monstrous winged creatures soar overhead, casting menacing shadows on the already crumbling landscape. In the distance, a colossal demon, its body etched with arcane markings and crowned with wicked horns, surveys the destruction with glowing red eyes. Lesser demons, twisted parodies of humanity, flank the behemoth, completing the nightmarish illustration. Undeterred by the overwhelming odds, Jinwoo summons his most powerful shadow soldier, Tusk. Since his shadow extraction, Tusk has undergone a remarkable transformation. His once monstrous form has become even more imposing, radiating an aura of chilling power. Equipped with the Orb of Avarice, a potent artifact pulsating with magical energy, further augmenting his formidable abilities. Tusk stands alone against the demonic horde, a lone warrior facing a tide of darkness. Tusk charges forward with his form imposing and aura chilling. The high-ranking demon and his army strides towards Tusk. The ground trembles and buildings crumble under its relentless advance. As the two titans close the distance between them, the very air seems to crackle with anticipation. Tusk, equipped with Orb of Avarice, channels its power. A massive fireball begins to form in his outstretched hand, its surface crackling with fierce, swirling flames. With a decisive motion, Tusk hurls the fireball into the sky. It explodes with a thunderous roar, and the sky is suddenly ablaze with torrents of fire raining down upon the demon army. The inferno spreads rapidly, turning the battlefield into a blazing furnace. The demons, caught completely off guard, scramble in a futile attempt to escape the searing heat. Fire is relentless, consuming everything in its path. A notification flashes on the screen. You have defeated a top-ranking demon. From a distance, Jinwoo watches the aftermath of Tusk's devastating spell. The battlefield, now a charred expanse, reflects the sheer scale of destruction unleashed by Tusk. Jinu's gaze is fixed on the scene. Despite the Orb of Avarice boosting Tusk's powers, Jinu notes that Tusk's abilities might have been diminished since becoming one of his shadow soldiers. The orb's power is directly linked to its wielder's strength, and Jinu realizes that Tusk's current effectiveness is a fraction of what it could be. With this insight, Jinu decides to allow Tusk to wield the Orb of Avarice for the time being, recognizing its potential to enhance his capabilities. As Jinu considers these developments, he notices a significant increase in his own stats. The experience gained from observing the battle pushes him to level 81, marking a notable boost in his overall strength and abilities.